Good afternoon and welcome to TalkSports. It is our weekend program and it is also our live program, not recorded as previously. But as usual, we'll be discussing a number of issues. In fact, this weekend is our open forum discussion. For the past few weekends, we have been dealing with issues. But this weekend, we have basically an open discussion because there's so many things that we want to talk about. And certainly, whether it's my co-host, Rudy and Sylvan in Toronto, and there's also Hazel, even though Hazel Buckles she is attending another function. She will participate remotely and provide some insights as well. But lots of things we want to talk about. Um, Dealing with whether it's track and field, whether it's football, whether it's cricket. By the way, there's a lot of track and field happening today, this weekend in particular. In Grenada, there is the Whitsuntide Games, day one of the Whitsuntide Games. We have NCAA championships. We have LA Grand Prix, where we have two Grenadians participating. So lots of activities taking place. Then there's football, the GFA under 15 football competition, St. Andrews Football League. I mean, so many things. So that's why we want to have a sort of open discussion and discuss a number of issues as it relates to the development of our sportsmen and sportswomen. Okay. And I also want to talk about what you think uh, in considering. And, I had a discussion with a friend this morning, and we were talking about football, the best period of football in Grenada. Do you think was the 70s, the 80s, the 90s? Well, some folks may not even be able to, relate to that period. But, when do you think was the best period of football? And we can use other sporting disciplines, but let's just use football, for example, for Grenada. The 80s, the 70s, the 80s, or the 90s? I mean, you probably might be able to tell me about that. I know people like Chen Joseph and Tora Depredy and others may have different thoughts. They may probably want to put in their period. But on a serious note, we want to look at the whole issue of lack of infrastructure and funding as part of the development process for sports, talent development, and grassroots programs, access to education and sports, gender equality in sports is another one. What's about the role of sports in community development, sports governance and administration? We know of many attempts by organizations to form clubs, sporting clubs, but they end up with just teams. That the whole issues. But so we'll encourage you to participate, share your experiences, your insights, suggestions for improving sports, not just in Grenada, but the Caribbean as a whole. Let me welcome Rudian Sylvan. Rudian, um, good afternoon to you, Rudian, and welcome once again.
David, Michael, how you doing today?
Yes, I'm okay. I'm okay, Rudian.
That's good. That's good. And to the listeners, a pleasant good evening to you. I am truly excited to be here with you another Saturday. As usual, talk sports, especially when it's open. It's like open mic. People will have questions, and we'll try our best with our knowledge to kind of tap into it. And so, for those listeners out there, if you have a question or concern, just put it in a message, and we'll try our best to dig into it as well. But like I said, there's lots of issues going on. There's a lot of things that happening in sports right now. You talk about football. I have my era that I can mention. When we get there, which was the best years. Um, but there's a lot of things. Like I said, that is an really strong disappointment in sports from where we came from to where we are. Not only in Grenada, but also going way back to to other islands, other Caribbean islands. Look at infrastructure and those things. So
Yeah.
yeah, something to dig into, definitely.
One question to my friend Mona. That's Richard. Richard, you said the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. Why? Why would you say that? Give me some reason why you would say that. And then Quincy is saying the early 90s for football. I don't, um, Rudian, Some folk.
I would say the same. I was going to say the 90s, not necessarily the early 90s, but I would have said the 90s because in terms of me, um, based on my age, I would have been up there in age, to sort of go to the games and see a lot of stuff happening during the time the local footballs has been taking place, especially in the background of college ground. And it used to be really, when I say local, I mean, there used to be, and not only for us in St. Patrick's, but all over, right?
Right.
And then you used to go watch when you see Eagles and Nut Stars are playing. My goodness, man, those are everybody who is everybody will be out from the parish. So those to me was the good times. But everybody have their own. We don't see those things no more. We don't see that collaboration of how two teams when they come together. When you see,
Right.
I can remember when Hurricane and Coronage. We used to leave St. Patrick's and go to golf and watch those games. Because those was. We don't have that anymore like it used to be. So we don't know if the generational thing, and we can go back and the things that we talk about, there is no foundation anymore. There's nothing that stayed back and people learn from the past. Not necessarily don't add into the future, but the past is just disappeared and only the newness that is on now. So it's when you see what happening now with the newness, everything got destroyed. It's like a house. Keep the foundation, but build around it. But they get rid of the foundation, they're dealing with this stuff now. A hurricane will come and everything will scatter. And that's what's happening now. We're seeing that with
Yeah.
sports today. So I like I said, I'm going to
But
say the 90s, but this is my idea in the 90s because it was sort of my time when I could have go to a football game down the road or go to the pasty and watch local. So I'll say the 90s.
but we can understand and we can relate to the folks who will say the early 90s and those who will say the
Mm.
70s, the 80s, and 90s. Well, in the case of Mona, for example, he played um, football. I assume he played more in the 70s and the 80s. I don't think Mona played football in the 70s. He probably watched football in the 70s, but that's all right.
Yeah.
But I could understand why he would say the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, even though probably those who played competitively in the 60s may not, be around. Some of them may not be around, but certainly I think there is a legacy for the period, right?
Yeah.
Because I am certain if I get in, if I'm in conversation with someone who is in the 80s or 90s, the age category, they will
Yeah.
probably want to relate to football
Really.
back then in the probably the 40s or the 50s,
Yeah. Yeah.
even
Yeah.
though it may not be it may not have been at the standard in terms of facilities, and so many things have
Yeah.
changed
Yeah.
over a period of time, because
Time.
certainly
Yeah.
10 or 20 years from now what will happen.
Yeah.
um
No,
there will
definitely. Yeah.
there will those who may not know anything about the 90s.
Yeah.
The 80s will be a distant, we, for example, we cannot talk about football in the 20
Yeah.
and the 30s and the 40s. There isn't
So we was not
anything,
wrong. There was
not
nothing. Yeah.
not only we were not wrong, but there isn't anything that we can relate to in terms of historical
Yeah.
facts or things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
However,
Yeah.
it may change going forward because of technology and archiving and all these sort of things.
Things can
Folks,
change. Yeah.
yeah, 10, 20 years from now may be able to
Yeah.
research and relate on issues of historical facts, I will say. So
Yeah.
let me see. So let me get some. So Richard is saying that
Mhm.
period is more competitive, more and stronger club structure. Well, I think that
Yes.
is what I think made that difference.
Yeah.
Mona is correct. The club
Yes.
structure, because you had more clubs than teams. Even when you
Yeah.
spoke about St. Patrick, for example, Rudian, we had clubs, right?
Yes, there was. Yeah.
And I know in some areas where there were clubs, for example, it was not just a football. Well, it was a club, a sporting club, but they played
Sporting club. Yeah.
football and they played
They
other
had netball. They had
right,
cricket. Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
and
They did.
they
Yeah.
played right. So you had a better club structure, because I could relate to
Yes.
Queens Park Rangers, for example, as a club
Mm-hmm.
where you had,
Yeah.
well, the football, the netball, the cricket. Then of recent they had the basketball, they had track and field, even the Whitsuntide games that is taking place now. I can recall clubs, a lot of clubs participating back then. Hazel is saying, I'm wondering if we have information and training locations for our different sporting disciplines in Grenada. For example, do we have gyms, community centers that have partnerships with the sporting disciplines, access to pools, etc.?
No.
That is a tough one.
Yeah.
That is, yeah. And I am hopeful that with the new sports policy and the National Sports Council and all that it comes with it, that these things can be, answered or be dealt with. In fact, Hazel, I want to suggest that your organization should try to get an audience with the folks at the National Sports Council, well, those who the formation of the National Sports Council in its interim form. I think it's important so that you can provide some insights and hear from them and see how your organization can actually benefit from the National Sports Council. I played school football in the 70s, understandable, Mona. And how do you compare athletes today? Most people are saying players are soft today. You can hardly speak to players today. I try to understand you vibes, but I think I don't want to
I
miss
get what he's saying. I
what I'm
understand what
saying.
he's saying.
I think
Yeah.
I think also in the context of when you hear, and I assume he's referring to the comparison, okay? Because
Yeah.
they would have said back in the days, this player or this athlete was stronger, tough, was more resilient than those today, who they are considered to be soft, weak, and things like that. Yes, it depends too. And I mean, and when you look at it, when back then, if we have to do a quick comparison, I didn't think they had things like the gym and all these sort of things. Um, our competitors, whether it's footballers, cricketers, whoever they were just natural talent.
Yeah.
Natural talent. These days, you have the gym, you have the well, right now he's saying that yeah, I was correct. He's saying
Yeah.
people are saying um players were stronger mentally back then, and I want to say too that it could also be Rudy, and I don't know if you might be able to chime in there. Um, there wasn't so much of a distraction. Um, when listen, back then you involved in sports, and Mona might be able to chime in too. You go to the playing field, you play football, or you play cricket, or you play netball, whatever sporting discipline, right? You get back home, you do whatever chores you have to do. If you have to do homework, if you're in school, etc., etc. Then what you do? I think you get ready for bed. Okay. These days, Rudian, and I'm using Rudian as an example. If Rudian goes and Rudian gets home, Rudian gets to the computer, Rudian has to contact his friends, go on WhatsApp, go on Facebook, go on Instagram, Twitter, blah blah blah.
And
Oh, don't forget Rudian has to also watch TV, all these sort of things. Rudian, so many
before you
distractions. You understand?
before you know it, you're in bed at midnight,
Yes,
and you have to
yes.
be up at
Oh,
6 in the
okay.
morning.
So here now. So I was correct now because a friend, good friend from Barbados, Nisha, is saying, I agree with you. No internet, limited TV, no video games, right? And
But
obviously,
if
definitely no mobile phones.
but at the same time, this is what I said. There's this young man, because I had competition this week, qualifiers for high school championship, and this is a talented young man, 15, 14 years old, jumping 650, and he just never showed up for his jumps. When he showed up, we in the second round. That means he can't jump no more.
Mhm,
And I said something to him. I said, "There is a difference." I said, "You're talented, but you're not an athlete. There is a difference. There are people who just have talent from their parents. Generation of the talent. They love soccer, so they're just playing soccer, but they're not an athlete because athletes are disciplined to eat properly, sleep when they had to sleep too, and do those things. So there's the big difference today. So I think what happening today, the generation of today, in my opinion, is that they are just talented, but they're not athletes. So you have to get them in that place. When we are growing up, we grow, we athletes.
mhm,
We are athletes. because then we're doing everything that an athlete need to do. We used to lift rocks for weights. We used to throw rocks for shot put. You
Right.
get what I'm saying? We used to go and do those kind, pick up a big log and do this for. That's what we did. Yes, there is the weights today, which is really good, but that's what we used to because we didn't have anything because we were athletes growing up. So no, today they are
But
just
hold on.
talented.
Oh, hold on. Right. So that's the case. But what would you say then that even with back then you didn't have this, you didn't have that, the athletes were stronger, they were
Yeah,
as Vibes was saying, mentally, strong, physically
yeah,
strong, etc.
yeah,
But we still have those athletes today that are running faster times, scoring more goals. Even if we look for netball, for example, they are more competitive, etc., etc. So how do you make the comparison? Let me hear you.
if the same age group today, a 15-year-old today, um, and you transfer that same 15-year-old in the 90s, he's not going to go because of everyone is in the same category. They all it is in the same thing. You understand? So, and that's what it is today. They are not the mindset of the athletes back then was stronger, play harder. I always go back to basketball, and I use basketball all the time. Because look at the 90s in basketball. Everything now is a touch is a foul. A man, sprain his ankle, he's down for 3 weeks. We
Mhm.
have athletes back then who played with bleeding. Michael Jordan, a finger broke. He wrap it up and he's back playing. He plays sick. And I always say that because I remember this as a playing local in Magna College ground. We have a young team, young strikers. I remember it, young boys. And I went out and I was kicking ball that day and I kick. I had no shoes on and I kick under my foot and I just peel in the bottom of my foot. Some of us here had that before. You miss the ball and you kick in the bottom. And my foot and I had to play that day. And I just went home and I wrap it up, put on my boots and I went and play. Today, somebody's out for a month, 2 months.
Mhm.
So you see what I'm saying, right? So that the difference in terms of saying, yes, I want it, I'm hungry for it. So in spite of what I am going for it, today they say, well, they have other players, they can take care of it. The hunger is not as there. They're not as willing. They don't want it as much, And they go back to the young man say they don't listen. Does that fall on parents? Does that fall on home? How they were trained at home? We were raised strong. We was raised with that discipline. Is the generation of kids today raised with that same discipline that we was raised with? So that when they go, there's some. Remember, Michael, we used to get discipline outside. Can you discipline a child now?
Well, yeah, well, not just outside. Well, yeah, and you say
You see
outside,
what
you
I'm
mean
saying, man? Yeah,
outside of home.
outside of the
Because
home, in the
community,
community.
yeah, you
A kid
discipline.
will just cuss you off now and go and tell the parents will come and cuss you too.
Well, it's not just the
So it's how they
parent,
were raised, right? Yeah,
and it's not just the parent. They have instances where parents went to the school to, to
exactly.
fight with
To fight
teachers,
teachers.
and
Yeah,
things like that, because it appears now that
yeah,
the kids, they have more
yeah,
rights.
yeah,
They have more rights, as they would
yeah.
say. So
And I'm not against the
you cannot
education.
discipline. You cannot
You
discipline.
can, and I'm not against the education system. I'm not against people having a job. I'm not against people advancing themselves. But the teachers today are young, so not all. Please don't mistake what I'm saying. So some of them treat the kids as friends. So what we used to be, the discipline we used to get in school, that also no longer there.
Yeah.
There's a lot. So there's, like I said, it's not just one thing. It's a collaborative thing that how we were raised, what happened with us growing up. You understand? That is not wrong today, and I
Uh,
think that's part of the lack.
Good question. Do you think that coaches are part of the issue? Coaches get emotional. They react negatively to positive critics. When they lost, they don't do interviews after games, etc. They hold grudges. So how can athletes improve? And you see that. And by the way, when they refer to athletes, we use the general term because whatever sporting discipline, whether
Sport
it's
and discipline. Yeah,
basketball,
yeah,
whether it's
yeah,
football, whether it's
yeah,
whatever it is, you see sometimes, and it's the nature of the beast. Sometimes they're humans, and while not making an excuse for them, sometimes it's sad that some of them react that way because it's for them. sports is all about winning, you know. And while it should not be, because in some cases, and you know, it's just recreational activities, as you can put it, involving kids. You know, you have some coaches who believe that they must win at all costs, and
Yeah.
if they lose, you know, as Vibes is saying, you know, that's how they react, you know, which is kind of sad. Good afternoon to you,
No, most
Keller.
definitely, Michael. A
Yeah,
part of it too is that when you see an athlete will also come in and they'll say, "Coach, I'm tired today," and the coach change your workout to fit that person. So you see, like I said, it always goes. Kids will come and they're rude to the coaches, and coaches just okay with it. Some coaches wouldn't. Some coach wouldn't
yeah,
stand for some things. But
yeah,
especially the older generation, but the younger one, an athlete can come and say, "Coach, I can't do this today. No, coach, I'm not fit." They do one thing, coach, and then there goes the day. I had athletes to this day. I'm coach when they say, "Coach, I can't do it." Go home. Go home. And they
and
just pack up and go home. So I don't, because I don't waste my time. So I'm saying I'm picking up the coaches that I've seen and I'm listening to back in the 80s. So I still stick with that generation of style, not necessarily style of coaching, because I cannot coach the same way I was coached or the way they was done before. They can't do the work. But when they come with this type of discipline, I say, "Hey, go home. I'm not
and
not today." So
Quin-
unless we do that, yeah.
Quincy is saying, yes, that's true. Basketball is a perfect example. Rules have changed and the improvement of sports technology, hence the increased goals and individual achievements. Yes, definitely with technology, so many things have changed. And we are seeing to an extent, you know, the improvement in performance as well, you
Yeah.
know. He's also saying, just add, I have noticed that athletes nowadays would participate in sporting events thinking they are doing you as a coach a favor. And
Mm-hmm.
Hazel is saying emotional intelligence training is important for coaches and athletes.
Interesting.
We have to build our mental capacity on all levels. So it's not just the coach;
So true.
it's
Yeah.
also the participants themselves. They need to be,
And,
you know, it's sort of sad sometimes when we find, you know, the competitors, you know, engage in violence, for example, you know,
oh yeah. Yeah.
attacking officials, you know, we
Mm-hmm.
have seen that in football. You know, we have seen that in basketball. You know, others, you know, sporting where they attack officials. You know,
Yeah.
um,
And and that
and sometimes it's kind of sad in that these things are happening even at the amateur level, where we
yeah.
just say it's recreational. You know, there's not much involved in it. It's not your bread and butter. It's not your you know, not your career. It's not your profession. So it's kind of sad, you know, these things do
And
happen.
Michael, that's one of the things that I ask constantly. Um, do Grenada have a certain standard, or at least a
Mhm.
training which they can get coaches to get some sort of qualifications? 'Cause a lot of them coaching all day and they don't have no qualification. And Grenada itself should have some sort of standard where they could get some sort of what we're looking for, what it should be like, and some sort of class, some sort of training, some sort of level on the Grenada level. Is going to be a Grenada, not a World Athletics, not FIFA. No, just a Grenada standard. This is what we're looking for, so that people have those kind of standards and so forth. Coaches don't have no qualification and just coming, they're showing up, and they take everything that go with it because they see a kid who is talented.
Yeah. So on the split screen, as you see in there, that's the Whitsuntide Games taking place in Grenada. That's a live feed from Grenada, from the Kirani James Athletic Stadium. Um, yeah, it's day one, and they're going through the qualification period now. Quite a number of athletes outside of Grenada, especially from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. There are representatives from the British Virgin Islands, Trinidad and Tobago, and others. I'm hearing now that those from St. Kitts and Nevis did not make it to Grenada because of flight problems, and it's something Rudy and we are saying and hearing about. It's still sad in this
Goodness.
day and age that
It is that. My
you know, we having
goodness.
this problems with flights because we
Yeah.
understood that the combined events, for example, for
Pole vault.
the decathlon in particular,
Yeah.
because of the pole vault and things like that, so that the commercial airlines did not or could not have carried those pole vaults to Grenada. but they were able to get one of the carriers, I think, Amerijet, to do it. But by the time they, got through with them and to make that decision, they had called off the decathlon already. It's sort of sad in this day and age, okay? But even beyond that, hearing that the folks from St. Kitts were not able to make it because of flight situation. Could you imagine that it's easier for you in the Caribbean to get to North America or to Europe than to get within the
Mhm.
Caribbean? And
Yeah.
see how this is affecting sports in particular. I know back then when we had the OECS Sports Desk, for example, with Rex Pereira, he had a sort of he had an arrangement with Liat in particular that will carry, and they had the 50% rebate in particular that
Yeah.
will carry
Yeah.
those sporting teams around the region. Um, I'm telling you, sometimes, even with technology and even with the claim of progress, sometimes we've seen a
It's
lot
not
of
progress.
regression.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of regression. But this is something I'm hoping that folks, they're talking about it every year at the CARICOM level, but I'm really hoping that a you know, serious consideration is given to regional travel, intra-regional travel in particular. We have Caribbean Airlines. We have Inter-Caribbean. We have a small, well, a revamp or revive Liat. You know, who else have some other islands have their own arrangements or whatever. How can there be some sort of collaboration, consolidation, and have a very strong regional airline or regional airline companies that's servicing the Caribbean? We need that. Look how it's affecting sports. So from time to time we'll go back to the let's just get this race here, and then we'll see how we can go back to our discussion. Yeah, let's get this race here. Let me hear the commentators.
Salt, Extreme, Exceed, and they're off and they're running quite early. Concord, South City Rising Stars. Let's keep our eyes. It is running out of lane number 3. Matthew Graham from UTT being stretched there by South City Rising Stars. That seems to be the call and the order of the day. That's Graham out of lane number 3 for out of UTT.
So it's from the University of Trinidad and Tobago in position number 1 in this one, and followed closely, relatively closely, from the athlete out of South City Rising Stars from Grenada.
That's Neil Peters. So we just looked at the completion of event number 11, the men's 100 meters international open. So officially, it is Graham from UTT 10.94, Peters from South City Rising Stars 11.08, Grave Sandy 11.46, Zimri Stevenson, and the others bringing up the order.
Okay, so there we have it. Some action from the Kirani James Athletic Stadium. While we are doing that, some very interesting, points came up that I want to go back to, and part of our discussion. It's becoming very interesting. Let's get some of those things. And Kellen Antoine is saying, "What's your take on this? In Grenada, teachers." Spotting a specific sporting discipline and pressuring a student to pursue that sport, or should the student just choose on his or her own to decide his destiny regardless of what others may think? This is one, and I understand you have what you call talent identification, but
Mhm.
what Kellon is saying, whether they should pressure a student to take on a sport. Let me give you just one example of what I don't want to call it being pressured, but I recall when Junior Murray, we were in school together, as a matter of fact, and that's at the Grenada Boys Secondary School, and Junior was playing both football and cricket, and he was playing at one point in time. Listen to that. Junior Murray was the national junior goalkeeper, the national junior wicketkeeper cricket, and as well the senior football goalkeeper and senior wicketkeeper. There was one point in time, Junior Murray. A lot of folks may not know that. He was doing that at school when he was in school. So he had the title of wicketkeeper, both senior and junior, goalkeeper, both senior and junior. That's Junior Murray. So then Principal Mr. Victor Ashby asked Junior once that he has to make a decision. He had to make a decision too, because to be honest with you, Junior was like at that time was like a professional player. He was more out than in. So yeah, he was more out than in. But there was a time when football and cricket were basically clashing. And there you had a situation where Junior playing both football and cricket and having to make a decision whether he will go this time with the cricket or he'll go this time with the football, because he's called up to represent Grenada in football. He called up to represent Grenada in cricket. Both of them taking place around the same time. And he has to make a decision whether he's going to cricket or whether he's going to football. And Mr. Ashby, I will always remember that. Mr. Ashby asked Junior to make a decision. And that's when Junior made the decision for cricket. Right? And you saw what happened after that. Okay? But he played for a while at school level, though, right? He played representing GBSS. He also, for a little while, for Queen's Park Rangers. But I'm just showing you that, bringing that in terms of Kellon's point about, pressuring. I don't think it was a pressure at that time. I didn't take it as pressure, but just sort of like a guidance, making a decision. Okay, because I think at the time Junior was enjoying it, right? And he was more being competitive. And hey, okay, I'll go cricket or I'll go football today, or etc., etc. But I think Mr. Ashby saw something bigger at the time and asked Junior to make that decision. He didn't tell him he had to go to football or he had to go to cricket. He asked him to make a decision, and Junior made that decision. So sometimes you have to look at it in that way. Let me get some more and we'll come back. I'd say you're correct, brother. The teacher coaches are young. What happens when a coach reaches 40 plus? We tend to cast them aside. We say they are old and go for the younger coaches. We are wrong there. The older coaches are more experienced. I would say more experienced, because you could have a young coach with some level of experience. Yeah? They could have been in the trenches for a while. For example, Shalby Joseph. In fact, I want to speak about Shalby in a while. Shalby Joseph is young in the context, not as, in terms of playing football, but he's young. But Shalby has a lot of experience because why? He has been involved in coaching for quite a while, even at the academy, and things like that. So, and he's worked his way up, So sometimes the young thing is not so much young, as you will say. Hazel says, were there logistical training done that would have identified such issues before the games? Well, I don't think there's so much training has to be done for that. It's just that, you relying on the airlines. That is the situation she's referring to. You relying on the airlines to show up, as we'll say. For example, these are things sometimes you have no control over. I am getting ready to be deployed, and we have a situation where some officers, for example, got stuck at an airport, getting ready to fly out, and the flight was delayed. Then it was canceled, and they blame it on weather, blah blah blah, other things. Eventually, it was said that one of the co-pilots actually didn't show up, so they had to cancel the flight. I mean, you have no control over that. You understand what I'm saying? Now, you're prepared to travel. You're ready for your flight. You're there at the airport, everything. You have no control over whether the flight attendant will show up or will not show up. The pilot will or will not show up or whatever it is, So these things, do happen. So it's not so much about having been trained, but and then when you look at it, you don't have in other countries you have alternatives. You know that if a flight is cancelled here, you can
Hmm.
probably
Hmm.
get on
Yep.
another flight. In the case of New York, for example, JFK, you can go to LaGuardia, all these stuff. So you have alternatives in other, states and other countries. In the case of Grenada, in case of some parts of the Caribbean, you miss a flight, you cancel a flight, you try to
That's
get
it.
on one. Yeah, you try to get on one the next day. That's the unfortunate thing. Clever say it now. Let's go to that. Undoubtedly, the footballers of yesterday had a hunger, a quest to represent community and country. That's the thing I'm looking for. Community and country, right? Fingertip accessibility of information seemed to have had an adverse effect on perseverance and has stifled the creative brain cells of our footballers. Unlike track and field, thanks to the caliber of Kirani, Felix, Anderson, and others, right? So the whole issue back then, and I think Mona was trying to develop that too, was that, players had that thirst, that hunger to represent their village, their community, and to some extent, their parish as well as the country. So that is why there was this fervor, to participate. There was, I recall doing an interview with someone 2 years ago on the program, and they were basically speaking about paying to play. Back then, they had to pay to, for example, they had to pay, they would be selected on a team to represent Grenada, and they have to pay for their flight to go to represent Grenada. That's how it was sometimes. So, in the context was that is because of their thirst, their hunger to represent. There was a level of pride in doing that, even if it means pain. You ask an athlete or a footballer to do that today, you know that would not be possible. Yeah.
Well, Michael, up to 10 years ago, here in Canada, a junior team had to pay
Pay to, you mean, to
to
represent?
represent Canada up to
Okay.
about 10 years ago. And I
Oh,
remember being,
I think you made that point some time
yeah,
ago. Yeah.
and I remember being selected for a Canadian team, and they wanted going to Utah for some games, and they wanted $1,200, and I said no. My coach come and said no right away. He said no. Even though my name was on the list, everything, entry, the whole 9 yards was there. I just didn't show up. No, I'm not paying. So yeah, yeah. So that's recently, and so we always talk about this because you say some Caribbean islands who you claim to be third world countries are not. The athletes are free to go the same place, and here we have a big country. They say this is the land of milk and honey, and you're asking the same athletes to represent you, and you want them to pay. So a lot of meetings take place, a lot of things take place, and that change. Any national team you're on, it's free. So it takes a while to get there, but what you're saying is certainly true. But talking about many years ago, Canada just get rid of it about 10 years ago. So I mean, just imagine, yeah. So
Yeah, well,
certainly is a thing. Yeah,
Nisha says it still happens today, so you
yeah,
never know.
probably
In
is,
some places, yeah,
probably
in
is.
some places it still happens.
Probably,
But
probably is. I mean, Nisha mentioned something earlier on in terms of the technology today, the TV and the social media and everything that wasn't
yeah,
around then.
yeah,
A lot
including
of times,
don't forget, including the mobile phone. She said,
yes, and a lot of times, sometimes we always use this for an excuse. But I think also what we had growing up, we had, like I said, the clubs, and we had things happening.
the strong
You know,
clubs then. Yeah,
Yeah, and when we had Bruce on, I know exactly what he was speaking about. He said now, when you want to go to a field, there is a fence around it. Um, and I'll go to and I know what he's speaking about, and but that's the same thing. Like I said, we used to play ball in a certain park, and now you can't get into it. The park is basically run down, so there is nothing open. Michael, I'm not only saying this for Grenada, but here in Canada, we put on a brand new track, and they put a 10-foot fence around it. And to go in, you need a permit, and it belongs to the city, and taxpayers is pay for it, and that pay to maintain it, and we can't use it unless we have a permit. But
And
yet they
you're
want,
talking about
but
a permit that you have to pay for, right?
you have to pay for a permit,
Right.
and then they want athletes to go and represent Canada, and they want them to. How do you want them to get prepared to get there? So those a lot of stuff is not so. When we see certain things happening in those small islands, it's not only there; it happens out here too. It literally in Canada here it happens, and I'm not talking about Toronto. Outside of Toronto, a lot of these fields and them is open for the public, right? But here in Toronto, they have a big fence around it, and they can't get in unless there's a permit. So the struggle is still there in the sport,
Right.
and to come out from that, and for us to evolve from these things. Now, sometimes it's not only the technology. Yes, we're saying the technology, and yes, it's there. I totally understand. I totally get it. It's a part of it, but there's a lot more to it because there is nothing for the kids to do.
Yeah.
So what are they going to do?
Well, you talk about technology, and I am thinking about having a program sometime in the future where we will talk about how technology, whether it could be used to enhance sports. Well, in some areas it is in terms
It
of
does.
performance and things.
Yeah.
But with the new AI technology in particular, how can this? Where we going with AI technology and sports? I mean, but we'll have to get someone who is versed on technology and AI technology in particular, and and someone also who has some sort of relevance to sports. To
Yeah.
see how we can talk about that. It will make for a nice discussion, though. Kellen is saying, I remember Kenneth Murray. Um,
You
Junior
know my brother.
Murray's brother.
Yeah.
Yeah. Murray was one of the most versatile striker in secondary schools football. I wonder whatever became of him and his great soccer skills. Well, certainly at Murray's age, would not be playing. He played football at college level as well. I think it was somewhere upstate he played. And, after leaving college, he went into, professional, non-sporting though, professional life. But Murray is around. I do hear from him from time to time. Roger Augustine, who is actually at the stadium, I believe. Happy birthday, Roger, I should say. Roger is the father of Shanti Augustine. He says Omari Lewis of Concord of TNT, I think that's the club name, of Trinidad and Tobago, just ran a nice looking 10.35 seconds in men's open 100 meters, the win plus 1.8 meters per second. It's a nice day. I wish more people come out and support athletics. Folks, if you're hearing that, I think he's saying it's a nice day. It appears so. We just had a feed up a while ago. It appears to be a nice day for the field. If you have the time, it's today and tomorrow. Don't miss out on the action. Go and enjoy nice track and field action. They have a lot of kids from all over the Caribbean participating. That is what I like to see about track and field. It doesn't have to be the professional, okay? It's all part of the development, giving those athletes that opportunity, those young athletes, that opportunity. That's where the investment should be. And that's what I was trying to build after 2018 in particular, but that's another discussion. That's the focus. That should be the focus. So the idea was to build a thing for the inaugural and then get into the semantics of what we really want to achieve, giving these young folks that opportunity. Because, after Intercall, this is their first meet after Intercall. Intercall was since March. We in May,
Yeah.
and we we in the end of May. Now,
Yeah.
flash to a place like Jamaica, for example, where after Boys and Girls Champs and Carifta, every weekend there's a meet. There's one even today again that's going on. I'll be checking up on it every now and again, and that's why they have that advantage. We just have to give our young athletes that opportunity to compete It doesn't have to be for the big dollars. You can pay for the transportation and the meals and things like that. So I'll make but yeah. Um, every time I see that, I get a bit excited and speak. Here's what I'm saying in reference to age and experience. While I do believe that experience is important, I've seen younger coaches and athletes bring so much innovation and newness to sports today. We can all learn from each other. Certainly, Hazel, and we expect them to bring that with the advent of technology in particular. Our folks back then didn't have the technological edge. It was just by mere, luck and chance sometimes, as they will say, or just what they believe is best. These days, you can basically go and on the playing field, pull up your phone or whatever it is, and Google whatever you want, whether it's conditioning, whether it's how to do this, how to do that, or getting some real-time information from a coach. You can share information, coaches sharing information. So I am there and I can contact Rudy, and Rudy, I have this athlete, blah, 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 who is doing that. What do you think I should? And within seconds, Rudian could say, hey, blah, blah, blah. Or Rudian can call me on the phone and say, blah, blah, blah. Here's what to do. Or I can put on my video, show Rudian what he's doing there, and Rudian say, okay, let him do two 300s, That's coaching. No, come 10, 15 years ago, you didn't have that.
No.
You have to be down there with your notepad, with all your information that you have written, or all these sort of things like that. So even
But
when
you
you
also
look
have
at football, even when you look at football these days, European football and all these sort of things, the coaches there basically have real-time information, including reviews and all sorts of things that they can look at and see, for example, whether it was a penalty, and all these sort of things. Technology at the
technology.
So obviously, technology to an extent has enhanced, football and cricket, sports in particular, to an extent.
But it's what you do with the technology.
Well, yes.
If you use it for a positive, then a positive will come from it. If it's for negative will come from it, and this is what happening. Technology make people wealthy right now. People make millions of dollars, including some athletes. Right?
Well, I was about to say, off the field with technology. For example, they say Sha'Carri Richardson, she makes more money from social media than probably in endorsement.
Yeah.
She makes more money from her Twitter and Instagram and all these things than from endorsements. So that's what technology is. So even if she is banned, if she is injured, she still makes money through, sometimes as they say, posting crap, And
you do have and I do understand what Hazelin is saying, because we do have the gap. You have the gender gap too. And then you have those coaches who is the veterans, as we call them, don't stand for foolishness. So, they wouldn't accept you, because if you're not ready, if you're not this, you're not that, they don't want you. And then you have the young generation today of coaches coming up will take you and build you to get there. And some coaches, older coaches, want you to be ready now. They want you to come now. They want you to, they want you to have this now. And so you have that, also that gender gap, right? So a lot of the older coaches don't have the time now to build somebody from scratch. And the young one coming in now could build that person from scratch and from taking what the older one used to do. So I teach my athletes, I tell them to write on the workouts that I'm doing, listen to everything I'm saying, because one day you might want to be a coach. And the fact that you want to be a coach, then you could use those things, those discipline that are taught you, and use it at your advantage if you choose to coach in the future. So that's what it is. So yes, younger coaches is very, very important these days, and they bring a lot into the sport today. And like I said, technology, you have a tablet, you can draw a play for basketball, you can draw a play for basketball. For volleyball, you can draw a play. All these things can be done.
Netball,
technology, all these things can draw a play. Technology with me, even with my jumps, I could go on, I can show. When I do a photo, I can slow motion it and show them. this is not that. I can do that. So there is the technology, but it's like again, come back how we use it. The
Mhm.
generation today use it. They go home on the tablet. They go because why? There is again. I'm coming back to the same thing I said. There is no foundation of activities for them like it used to be.
Mhm. All right.
And maybe some places in the parishes have it. Maybe not all.
Right. So yeah, let's get some comments here now. Quincy, currently we have a good group, and that's good group of 400-meter runners from Grenada. Is there an issue? Is there an issue initiating a 4x4 relay team for major championships? Why the authorities are moving shaky with this matter? It's something, Quincy, we have been talking about for a while. Hopefully, there's there's some movements, because we're seeing those athletes doing what they have to do, and it's just for the authorities to respond. Roger Augustine is saying, I wasn't here for the earlier discussion regarding not having airlines that fly our route and not being able to accommodate athletes care for competition is just ridiculous. There must be some decision made by the LF committee with the airlines as it relates to this and cultural events happening on island at certain time. Yeah. So that's a point. When it comes to things like that, and that's why I think the National Sports Council will have its work cut out for them in terms of doing so many things, because things like, as he's saying, cultural events, sporting events, especially at the national level, right? There should be some level of discussion amongst various stakeholders. So the Athletics Association, for example, could have been speaking, as Roger is suggesting there now, with the LF committee, knowing for a fact that you are expecting so many athletes. Because remember, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, for example, do have a number of athletes participating. I don't know if they came with boat or I remember a year they came with boat. Some of them came down on the boat, right? Some went as a matter of fact, even went to Caracou and then get on to the Osprey and thing and come down. And then there were others who came down with the boat. But expecting so many athletes from the region that you could have had probably through the airlift committee to ensure that there's something in place, as Bahamas will normally do, have what they call a charter, for example. So whether it's from St. Vincent or whether it's from St. Lucia, well, in the case of that, St. Vincent appears to be where most of the athletes were coming from, could have been the hub, you know? And once they get to St. Vincent, you know that they will be onward to Grenada, because you have a charter coming in with, 2 flights, 50-seater, etc., because I think St. Vincent have quite a number of athletes there. But, I'm just saying that that's how you have to deal with these things in terms of the planning stage and involving the stakeholders. Because just relying on the commercial airlines just like that, could have problems, especially knowing that we have been experiencing that problem with airlift for quite a while. So the airlift committee comes in and, assist, you in that. Some more. It's time to put on the big boy pants and represent our country well. We are in. Do not miss the opportunities. Richard is saying, I experienced the same thing in Toronto back in 1989. I think he was referring to some points you were making there in terms of Toronto. And Roger says, thanks for the birthday greetings. God continues to bless me, very much so. Kellon, many of the athletes in the 70s, 80s, and 90s were highly motivated, even though they had substandard physical resources, unqualified coaches, little or no sports supplements, and little incentives to perform. But today, these modern athletes have everything at their disposal. Yet for all, many modern athletes take what they have now for granted and make little use of it. Now, all we can say is what if, and supposedly, and if only. Such is life. That's the point, taking things for granted, a lot of them do take things for granted, which is kind of sad because, as you know, Kellon is saying, back then, those sportsmen and sportswomen, and even coaches, administrators didn't have that much. In fact, administrators didn't even had an office. They didn't have computers. They were stuck. They were taking notes, and in many cases, if you're the president or the secretary or whoever, you keep that at your home, and you carry it to the next meeting. You carry the big book with the register, the attendance, and you know, and the subs, as they will say, you know, all these sort of things. These days, you have so many things. Even if I have to pay my contribution, I may not have to pay it in cash. They may not be accepting cash, credit card, you know, WhatsApp. I mean, not WhatsApp, Cash App, you know, whatever it is, you know. So many things have changed, you know. And as he's saying, a lot of them, they're still taking these things for granted. Comments still, exactly, I've been saying this. We need more meets for our athletes. Hazel says, our seasoned coaches are more resistant to the use of technology due to them not having access during their era. If you are willing to learn despite your age or experience, then you will be able to elevate yourself. Well said about that. You know, I don't think age has much to do
Much
with
to do
that.
with anything.
Yeah,
So
because
true.
you have football coaches, for example, who are in their 60s and 70s, and they're coaching well,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and
But it's
they
but it's
have
not
embraced, and some of them have embraced technology to the fullest, you know.
to the fullest. And it's no different from a doctor. Doctors have to constantly be in school learning things. Coaches constantly have to be level and upgrading and new things that coming about, new ways of new rules, and they have to go and learn about those things. So yeah, definitely, if you want to learn, you will learn. Nothing will hinder you from learning anything.
Right. Let me just take in something before we leave here. I think that may be the if I'm not mistaken, it may be the 400 meter.
And Liam Gihari, and they are off and running. It's official as they make the stagger down the back straight. Augustine isn't there. Let's see who's going to hold steering, hold true to form. Early, it is two of the other athletes as making their way down as they make their way get to about the 200-meter mark. Who is it going to be? At the top of the 200-meter mark, they continue to run side by side, but it is Augustine out of lane number 4 that decides to make the move as she heads for home. Augustine out of lane number 4, representing Club 473, just literally holding true to form as she makes her way down the stretch some 50, 60 meters so to go. It's going to be an easy win for her. I think right now she's just running against herself and the clock to determine lane assignments. But it's an easy win for her. Um, so it's Shanti Augustine out of lane number 3, and taking second place, it was Dixon from Concord that came in sort of distant second place. We await the official times, but what we just saw there was the completion of event number, the girls 400 meters, 100 meters. Pretty slow one though. Shanti Augustine from MVP winning that one in the time of 58.23 seconds. Bain in the time of 1 minute 02.79, and Lane out of Trinidad and Tobago it that a time of 1 minute 04.45. Antoine.
So we should have some competition later on today. In the
Yeah, yes, certainly the action continues and the Kirani James Athletic Stadium. So you folks who are watching, if you have the time, please go down and support our young athletes. Roger is telling us that very fine weather. I want to thank TNR Communications for giving permission to use the link. And certainly, if you outside like us, and I'm saying outside of Grenada, you can watch it on YouTube or Facebook, whatever social media streaming you use or you're familiar with. But you can check TNR Communications on YouTube. Very good link, very good. The quality of the broadcasting in particular really improved with TNR Communications, and sports and culture, I can say, in particular, have got a fillip from his services. Kellan is saying, imagine breaking a record running on bare grass without spikes and no coaching. I salute athletes of those years. Yeah, yep, that's how it was then. So, folks, I want to thank you very much for being part of this discussion. It has been a while. We haven't had our open discussion. Lots we got to talk about, but there was so much more I wanted to talk about. By the way, there's also GFA under 15 football going on. St. Andrews Football League in progress as well. As I said, we have the Whitsuntide Games. We also have NCAA championships. We have a couple of Grenadians participating, and there is later on coming up. I think it's around 4 o'clock or so Eastern time. We should have the LA Grand Prix. We have Kirani James in the 400 meters. We also have Anderson is in the javelin. I think, yeah, Anderson is in the javelin. But we do have competitors. I want to congratulate our own Lois Alexis on being named the tennis coach at Minnesota, University of Minnesota. Lois has been moving up and up and up and up. And, you know, Lois is a former national tennis player. And, yeah, she has been doing pretty well. And certainly, our discussion started with the best period of football in Grenada, whether you think it was the 70s, the 80s, or the 90s. Well, Rudian said the 90s. I think Quincy said the 90s. Mona said the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Was it the 60s? Yeah, he said the 60s. I will want to say that the yesteryear, was better. But I experienced the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, and especially the 80s and the 90s. And I can tell you, when you look at the 1989 Shell Cup, where Steve Mark, or the late Steve Mark, was the best footballer of the year, got that title as the best footballer of the year, rated the best footballer of the year. And boy, I was telling my friend Andre Jerome, thanks and Andre for that discussion today, that how we were so unlucky because we had some of the better players. Trinidad and Tobago defeated Grenada. It was 2-1 in the final to win the Caribbean Cup, Shell Caribbean Cup that year. And most of the Trinidad players got professional contracts. The Dwight York, the Russell Latapi, and all these guys got professional contracts. And our guys didn't get anything. Well, in truth and in fact, they had the Jack One and others who were able to push them. But it was so unfair that we had some of the better players. Okay? Better players. In fact, even the late Steve Mark was rated the Caribbean's best player that year. And yet for all, we were not able to get our players, anything, not even a professional jinx, not even to watch a professional game. But Trinidad was able to get most of their players, quite a few of them got contracts. Well, the Dwight York moved on to Manchester. Well, he went first to Arsenal, and then Manchester grabbed him and things like that. So, but that's the nature of the beast at times, it's so unfortunate. But yeah. He was Caribbean Footballer of the Year. That's what I'm saying. Wait, Toro is telling me now that 1970s and 80s football, cream of the crop. Also, Toro is saying the 70s and the 80s, cream of the crop. So you see what I'm saying? I added the 90s because I, had some, the 89, 90, 91, period. You had the Draytons and all these guys. Before that, you had the Cecil Victory and the late Victory. You had Medford, the Bullerheads. Yes, Carnage used to be fighting around Carnage and Honved, boy. I keep telling you, if sometimes I think about those days, Rudy, and whether it's the Hurricanes, whether it's North Stars,
Mm-hmm.
because those
Mm-hmm.
days you had very competitive
Yep.
teams, and those guys were serious about football. Okay,
Oh yeah. Oh
yeah,
yeah. Oh yeah.
Stars. A lot of the teams that you're hearing now, some of them came out of because other teams, as they say, would mash up, and
Yeah. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Eagles and all of them came out of other teams. Hard Rock, they were
Hard
not
rock.
a rock
Yeah.
back then. You had the team like North Stars, St. John Sports, Ball Wizards, um, yeah, boy, you had good football. Yes, so let's give a wrap and see what we can say. Yes, Lois Alexis. Doing very great things. Um, Lyndon Victor is at a meet in Europe. Thanks, Quincy. Oh my God, congrats on your EPL victory. Well, I was waiting to hear if someone would say something. I mean, I did not post. Tomorrow it'll just be a walk in the park. Just to give the fans something to shout about. So, folks, if you really want to watch, you just give a sort of thank you very much, But yes,
City.
that
City. City.
Kellon, which I have my T-shirt out there. I didn't put it on today. I didn't want to boast, as I said, But certainly, I thank you. I was saying that all along. In fact, at the start of the program, these two guys were talking. You remember? Both of us were talking. What did you say? What did you say? What did I say? I said let's wait and see
And
how
see.
the season progress, and then we'll start to talk. It was too early, you know. Hey, Arsenal jump out in front and blah blah blah. Thing. Yeah, they gone. Say, take it easy, guys. Take it easy. Take it easy. That's how we do things sometimes. Okay, and I'm certain that they also the NBA. You know, will we have we seen the last of LeBron James? Have we?
No. No.
You don't think so?
No. No.
Ah,
I think like I'll probably take his word for it. He wants to play with his son. So I think that's what be that.
yeah, but all right, if you say so. I still believe that well, the pundits are saying that it could be. Okay, so
Yeah.
Kellan is saying he wants to play with his son. Okay, so that's what you
Yeah.
all guys are saying. He wants to
Yeah.
play with
I
his son.
think I think he wants to play with his son. Yeah.
Right, well, I could understand what the thought pattern is now.
Yeah.
Let's just take some last comments. They're glad you gave Uncle Jack one a credit, the real boss. And kind of didn't just used to be around. We used to put leather on teams like your boys from River Road. So we'll continue that discussion on Facebook, because I see you have been tormenting some folks. Every time we mention the name of somebody, Toro finding some way to say, "Oh, he's from the wharf, from the Carnac. Father is from the Bedford, for example. Oh yeah, we lend you this guy. We lend you this guy. You see that everyone from River Road have some sort of bearing from the Caribbean. Battles between Victoria and Guelph. Oh my goodness, yeah, boy. In football, um, he wants, yeah, boy. Rudian, I don't know. You said you used to go to Guelph and watch football. How you used to get back to St. Patrick? If you go with your team and your team wins, how you used to get back to St. Patrick?
We had to pass back road. We can't go to the front. A back road. We have to go to the back road.
Toro might tell you going to Guelph, play, Carnage beating, winning in St. John's. The easiest way to, normally you leave Guelph, you just drive down. But I'm certain that Toro and them would have known that either one, you leave before the match finish,
Yeah.
or you go around Victoria, Sutters, and go right around. You know,
Hmm. Yeah.
boy,
You go
but
back
it
road.
was
You go
fun
back road.
because
It was fun.
2 weeks,
Yeah.
yeah, because probably the next week or 2 weeks after they're coming down. But they never had that problem. They never had that problem, and the footballers were good pals, best of friends. Boy, just the supporters in that boy. just the supporters.
It wasn't the players, it was the supporters. And even we go back to Hurricane in the days. I listened to Toro and them speak when they say that when they go somewhere and they lose, they don't go front, they go to the back, they go straight home, they don't go to the bar
no,
because
no,
the fans is waiting for them. Yeah.
listen, mister. So Queen's Park Rangers were one of the teams that when they go out back then, 70s, 80s, 90s in particular, you have one bus for the footballer and probably 2 or 3 buses for spectators, the supporters. I can recall that vividly, especially on a Sunday, right? Since 1 o'clock, for example, you're on the bridge, as they will say, linemen, waiting for the
Hmm.
bus. And the buses will come down, mostly the buses that apply to either Tempe, Montparnasse, or Sabolio routes. And they will come and you have your money, everybody try to get into the bus, you want to end seat, all this other things. You want to sit in front, all the kind of things. So you're rushing
Sit
into
in
the
the
bus.
back.
Yeah, boy. And you're going now. And before you board the bus, people don't start talking about the escape route. Because you're certain you're winning, eh? You are so confident of winning, but you planning the escape route. And the drivers knew by then what they have to do. So sometimes you as a spectator, you may not see the end of the game, eh? Because the driver and everyone in the bus getting ready to leave before that game finished to skate, as they'll say, let's skate, boy. And then you will get the result, what it ended as. When you get down, you wait on the bridge, and then when the players come down and things like that, they'll tell you, okay, the final score was 2-0, 1-0, 2-1, or they came back and equalized, or what and what, the game ended premature, all sorts of things like that. So,
Yeah.
but it used to be fun all along. Yeah, boy, it used to be real fun. And then they used to have problems with our referees and linesmen. At that time, linesmen used to be running for their life. I mean, boy, I'll get someone to talk about this thing one of these days.
Yeah, I mean,
Boy, this,
in high school. I remember was watching. I was in a physical education class, and they were showing this video uh, of soccer where the refs have to run for their life. They have to run and jump the fence into the car and they're gone because the fans is coming for them. So this is not a
um,
now thing, and that's years ago. So this is not a thing that happened now. This is like
so,
years ago. It's been going on.
so
Yeah.
he says Roy Manny St. John was the only referee who could have kept the peace in St. John and St. Mark's during GFA games. The late Roy St. John, the brother of Walter St. John. He was everything. He was and remember a woman yelling Yankee Man while about to score on Hurricanes. If you score that goal, I'm joking you with this pick. Boy, the spectators used to, they used to do more than their players. Some of them used to score goals, because when you say score goals, they are basically on the field, they on the field. So, I mean, and Rangers had their own, because you had the late Daisy and then you had Eve, and I mean, I could even say probably my mother sometimes, they on the field when based on how the game is being played, you see them going onto the field to look to see where the ball, when the goals score, they run onto the field. Boy, we don't see that these days, or if we do, the violence. By the way, the violence never used to be like what it is. I mean, the violence in the context of it might be punches and things like that. So, I know there was threats of stones, pelting, and blah blah blah. But these days the violence is knives and guns and the stabbing and all these other things.
Yep.
Stabbing and things. Thanks to the football teams, many supporters traveling with their teams found girlfriends and wives. I think it was Kessie that was on our program last year, and they were asking him why he was living in St. Andrew in Grenville. And I think it may have been that, it may have been that because he played for, which team he played for? But was a team in, a Fontenoy or whatever team, but go in and play football. And he did acknowledge that was the case. I think someone threw it out to him and he did acknowledge that. George Gotti Robinson is saying, I'm in Toronto and it's great to hear Whitsuntide is on this weekend this year. Would have been the 60th anniversary. My last participation at these games in 1983 was the 20th anniversary, the good old day. Gotti, when you talk about your last participation, was that when you ran the relay leg? I know of Gotti running a relay leg back then. I believe it could have been then, but Gotti was a bad. I mean, when you talk about running relays, boy, I could always remember that. And Whitsuntide, by the way, Whitsuntide games have some vivid memories. Have some memories there that back then, because Gotti will tell you, Claire will tell you, Toro will tell you too. You had Whitsuntide games that had the cycling aspect of it. There was a cycling aspect of it on the
Yeah.
grass track, right? Woo, boy. This bringing back some memories and some chill, When Hunter beat Carnage lose, they went up Market. Went up Market Hill. Well, he says Symmetry Hill, not Market Hill. Oh, so Symmetry Hill. Okay. All right. So they play in Queen's Park. You lose. You can't go wrong the city area. You have to go up Symmetry Hill. Okay, understand. Gotti is saying yes. So it was back then, the relay. Boy, I could remember that, Gotti. That's why I mentioned the relay. Boy, Gotti was a bad relay runner, man. Yes. And I could remember that. Gotti, if only we had these sort of videos and, things. And I was speaking to Patrick Simmons one night it was, and I was telling him about that, we cannot make the mistakes of yesteryear. We have to start documenting and archiving these things. Could you imagine we talking about Whitsuntide games back then in 1983 or even whenever, and we can have some actual clips we can show, even if it was black and white, of then, and people can see what it was like. We cannot make that mistakes. Going forward, we have to do better for our children and our grandchildren, for the future generation. We have to do better. They must be able to see. So this is Whitsuntide Games 2023. 10, 15, 20 years from now, they should be able to go and see that. I was a fan of Queen's Park Rangers in my time as a boy growing up, even though I am from St. Andrews. I remember SAFL supporters passing me by the roadside and not offering me a ride because I was back in the tongue side. No, I'm a Paradise FC fan. The devil took the hindmost. Yes. So that used to be where you ride in. They have it similarly on the Velodrome, but you ride in. But when you come around and with the bell and things like that, so if you have to try to get to the front. If you're behind, you're out. Boy, that used to be some speed. And you had some of the best riders from Grenada. You had the Sam Poom and others. You had the Bayer. I mean, quite a few of them. And then you had the guys coming from Trinidad. And where else they used to come from? I remember some of them from Trinidad, but they used to come from the other islands and things like that. So, boy, that used to be some riding, cycling. Sometimes we had some crashes and things. Eh? Luckily, it was on the grass, but you had some serious crashes and things like that. So, no DJ Angel Harps play the music for intimate. Oh my goodness, yeah. So that was the other thing about Whitsuntide and sports meet around those times. No DJ. You used to have pan music. Pan was it. And good entertainment as a matter of fact. They could call Joe Pitt back then. Bass, you must have a program on cycling. We had some bad cyclists. Fellas like Roger Pierre and Everett Samuel are still around to talk about. Among schools, GBSs used to dominate. So Everett Samuel, I remember speaking to Everett Samuel, then we call him Sam Poon, then from Tempe, some years ago. And I still hoping to get him on the program. I know he has his big company and things, so sometimes he's very much engaged. But he gave the assurance that he really want to speak, but it's just the time, getting there. But I know Roger Bayer and probably Roger Pitt will want to talk about that, because I'm telling you, Rudian, if you hearing those guys talk about those things, the only thing that will be
Yeah.
missing is you don't have actual video. They may have
Footage.
photos and things like that, so
Yeah.
but hearing them speak and seeing that, I'm telling you, it was a wonder. I can recall vividly. And cycling used to be a big following in Grenada back then. There were folks who will go to the Whitsuntide Games specifically for the cycling. The cycling created the excitement. When it's time for cycling, it's almost as if Kirani James is running a 400 meters. It captures the attention of everyone. And it's real excitement. The cheering, the clapping. I mean, yeah, boy. Big upset when Sherman, the one always to end up last, put a licking on the best of the best. Yeah. Well, so Toro and Clev, yes, I'll work on that cycling thing, because I think it's important. World rebound, Roger Gibbon and Hazley Crawford of TNT Best was at Whitsuntide in the 70s, yes. So some of the best athletes, cyclists, showed up at Whitsuntide Games. Hazley Crawford, he was beaten by Friday. And then there was a big runner that Donald Pierre beat. I'm trying to remember his name, but Donald Pierre beat a top runner again. But so many things that we can talk about regarding Whitsuntide Games. Yeah, renowned Roger Gibbon. Yeah, I thank you for that, Goatee. Well, Goatee was a part of, not just as a competitor, but later on he became an administrator, because during his time as president of the then, in fact, Goatee was president of the then Grenada Amateur Athletic and Cycling Association, because cycling was part of it, and things like that. So okay, that's the name I was looking for. Fred Newhouse of the USA. That's the name I was looking for. So some of the top, the cream of the crop in those days showed up at the Whitsuntide Games, and Hazley Crawford became a world champion, Olympic champion, I should say. Olympic, yeah. Yeah. Right. And that was hosted by a club, not government, sporting club from those Wharf boys like to give trouble. Those Wharf boys like to give trouble. I'm telling you, Rudy, you must check to see if you don't have family from the Wharf, because Toro might be able to tell you that cousin of yours is actually from the Wharf.
He's actually from the Wharf. Yeah.
I've been looking. Chen Joseph has been posting these famous river roadians, and Toro has been able to identify that this person's father is from the Wharf, this person's uncle came from the Wharf, blah blah blah. It's interesting though. But these two communities, the Carenage, Wharf, and River Road, Dabo, sort of synonymous with sports and culture, as they will tell you. Calypsonians, Panis, whatever, from the Carenage, Wharf, sportsmen as well. And when it comes to River Road, sportsmen, sportswomen, and even some in the culture as well, So indeed. Thank you very much once again, fans. Hopefully next weekend, our program will be from South Dakota, because, as you know, at this time of the year, it's time to move around. So I'll be coming from that far part of the U.S., South Dakota, our program next weekend. I want to thank you for being part of our program, Marginalized Community. Yeah, it was marginalized, but, Baker and Conger Wharf boys for sure, Lex and Fletcher too, and Dala. And Goatee said, Fred was beaten in Southern Gates in Trinidad, fresh out of medal in the Olympics. See that? Yeah. Fresh out of because then you had the games, the two big games in the region at that time was the Whitsuntide Games and the games in Trinidad, right? You had the Hampton, was it Hampton?
Hampton Games, yeah.
Yeah, you had the
Hampton Games. Yeah, I've been to that already. Yeah,
and things like that. I think it's a Hampton now, but before it might have been a different name. But those are
Yeah,
the
I know.
two.
I run
Yeah,
at the Hampton Games. Yeah.
yeah, those are the two big events in the region. Nothing in Jamaica and these places. So Trinidad and Grenada, everyone coming there. All right. Yeah. So thanks again, folks, for joining us. Pleasure. Continue the discussion on social media and join us next Saturday for another programs, Talk Sports. Hopefully, we'll have a guest and we'll talk more. Thank you very much. And see you then. Rudian,
It's a pleasure as
lots to,
always.
yeah. And I guess you have
Yeah.
lots to follow up on, as we say,
Yeah,
there's a track and field
my
there.
girl is jumping at 6:30, so
Oh,
I said
six
to get
Eastern
ready.
time, right?
Yeah, she's jumping at 6:30. Yeah, the
Oh, so,
qualifiers in for
so
NCs.
she's in
Yeah, she's in Florida.
NCAA East, Florida.
Yeah, she's in Florida. Yeah,
Right. So,
yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, so that's good. She's number 2 rank in NCs, number 9 rank in the world. So it's really
Right.
good. Yeah,
So we have the Whitsuntide games going on. We have NCAA East and West, the preliminaries going on. We have, as you said, GFA under 15 football. We have LA Grand Prix. We also have this meet in Europe that Lyndon is competing in as well.
and tomorrow there's a Diamond League, right?
Yeah, there's one. There
Diamond League. Yeah,
is the Rabbit,
the Rabbit.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I
yeah.
think so. Yeah,
That's in Morocco, I think. Right.
yeah.
And then, well, that should be big, especially the 100. Eh? don't forget. Yeah, that should
Those
be big.
boys. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have the time, folks, in Grenada, you can go on to this, head down to the Kiani James Athletic Stadium. Head down to the stadium, support track and field. Nice weather, cool atmosphere there. Just go on. They're doing preliminaries, so you're not missing much in terms of the action, the live final, I should say. And then it's today and tomorrow. So please, okay. Thank you very much, Rudian.
All right. Have a blessed one.
Same to you. Thank you. All right. And thank you very much, folks, for joining us. As usual, it's been a pleasure. And I look forward to your company next weekend. Let me, probably just before I leave, let me just join TNR Communications once again, get that 400 meters. I think it's about to go down. So let me see if I
Francois
can get
and Somali Felix
Yeah,
and Lewis from Concord.
we were anticipating seeing Joshua Lamb from the Ghana Defense Force here. I'm not quite sure why he's not in the lineup this time, but or if what the issues were, but just 4 athletes in this one.
For athletes, Ferdinand, Francois, Felix, Lewis, completing the field of the men's 400 meters dash open international. And we'll see how this one translates itself. Excel, East by 2, Concord by 1. All eyes peeled as we await the start of Heat 2 in the men's 400 meters dash at the Whitsuntide Games inside of the Kirani James Athletic Stadium. And they are off. Ferdinand, Francois, Felix, Lewis. Who is it going to be as we look at them? Lewis is in 7. Felix runs at a 4. Francois. Felix is in 5. Francois runs at a 4. Ferdinand runs out of 1. But it is seen is Michael Francois making the early charge, running at the lane number 4, and he's literally just pulling away from the rest of the field, establishing his authority and his dominance, the sort of control that it is the man himself running out of East, Michael Francois, out of lane number 4, completes an easy win here in the men's 400 meters dash open international. And we see how we wait for the official times and see
46.46 seconds, respectable.
quite a respectable time. Any surprise, or it was what you expected, Antoine?
No surprises really. So 46.47 rounded up by 0.1 of a second. 0.01, sorry.
So Michael Francois of Ace, 46.47, and Kelly Lewis from Concord, 48.54. Zamali Felix out of Ace, 49.03, and Malik Ferdinand from Excel, 49.45, rounding up the field in the men's 400 meters dash open heat 2.
Yes, folks, 46.47 by Michael Francois. That's a name that has been, we have been hearing about constantly in terms of local talent, and it's a name that you should try to remember. This is a good time in the context of 46.47, Nikki Lewis, 48.54, that's Concord of Trinidad and Tobago. But to 46-47 in that sort of competition, lane 4, it's a good time, competitive time, I should say, in that context. And that's someone we should keep an eye on, Michael Francois. We have been talking about that 4x4 relay team, and you're seeing, the outside of the Kirani James, you have the Francois local talent, you have Felix, and even with Zimali, even though he hasn't had a very good time there, but his brother, Gamali, is in the 45 region as well, okay? 45, 46 region, Gamali Felix. And I'm certain Akot Modest could hold on his own as well. And then there's, you're not leaving out Nazio John, who has an interest in competing in the 400. He has been saying, hey, while I'm doing the sprints, the 1 and the 2 seems to be my best. He says he wouldn't rule out going into the 400, and I think he has that desire. So when you look at the makeup of a 4x4 Grenada team, it's possible. It's quite possible, Yes, Toro, more off people. Yeah, I know that. I said it, but I didn't think you would have come back and say that. But you caught me at that one. Yeah, more off people. Yeah, but certainly. And then you have people like the Troy Mason and others. And Troy is bordering around a 46, probably 47, and with good competition and thing, I'm certain they can go down to a 45. But it'll be interesting to see in the final what kind of time these guys produce. But I think this is one, probably the 400 meters is one you should really look out for in the final. Okay. I don't think it's a time final. Because I'm hearing heats. So I'm hoping that there's a final. Okay. We have enough athletes competing there that we should be able to have a final. So again, I think it's something you should really look out for in terms of the setting up or the compilation of a 4x4 Grenada team. It's possible. It's quite possible. Okay. I'm certain that the Athletic Association looking into that, just give them some time. Well, we have been giving them time, but I'm still saying give them some time. Yeah. So, folks, again, I'm appealing to you if you're in Grenada and you can go support the athletes at the Whitsuntide Games. There's also in the outer parishes, there's football, the GFA under 15. There's also, I think, playoff going on, okay? There's also playoffs going on in GFA football. Please do. And if you have the time, wherever on social media, you can monitor our athletes. I know that the LA Grand Prix will be on television later on. It's on NBC. Yes, NBC from 4 o'clock Eastern time. So you can follow the action as well. Thank you very much for being part of the program. It's always a pleasure. Remember, hopefully our program next week comes from South Dakota. I hope you'll have the time to join us. The time zone is a bit different, so I'll let you know during the week how we'll do that and ultimately if we'll do that time permits. So, but I thank you for being part of the program, all your comments, everything that you have brought to the program as per usual. Every time we have an open discussion, we get so much, we learn so much. Certainly, the discussion about our teams, or especially our football teams back then, whether it was the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, for a lot of discussion. And I'm hoping that we can continue that discussion sometime in the future, as well as the suggestion by Toro, that's Lincoln Deputy, that we tried to get some of those folks with cycling yesteryear, the Roger Bayer and others to talk about cycling. I think there was a Brown again from the Wharf Toro who used to be in cycling, because the Browns do a lot of cycling. They were tennis players, the lawn tennis, one or two of them in football, but just specifically tennis. And I think there was a Brown who used to be in cycling, a lot of cycling. Kudos to the Wharf. Wharf and Tan team. Yeah, Wharf and Tan team. Thank you very much. See you then, and enjoy the rest of